Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Hong Kong fire death toll rises. Investigation continues. A shooting involving the National Guard triggered an immigration review. A coup occurred in Guinea-Bissau, detaining the president. Venezuela banned airlines due to escalating tensions with the U.S. Economic outlook summarized with fiscal policy considerations. Cyber attacks expose vulnerabilities in UK local authorities' data security. The Supreme Court deferred a Library of Congress removal case and addressed executive overreach. Pope Leo focused on diplomacy, peace, and reconciliation. South Africa reacted to its exclusion from the 2026 G20 summit. UK net migration decreased following policy changes. France reintroduced military service due to Russian security concerns. Australia's environment laws underwent a significant overhaul. Thailand faced governance and ethical challenges. Nepal's young protesters drove a political reset. Southern Thailand experienced economic losses and recovery efforts from flooding. Hong Kong high-rise fire, rising death toll, and ongoing investigation. A devastating fire in Hong Kong's Wong Fuk Court high-rise complex has resulted in a rising death toll, now exceeding 55, with approximately 200 individuals still unaccounted for. The blaze, which erupted Wednesday afternoon, quickly engulfed 7 of the 8 towers within the densely populated housing estate. Investigations are underway to determine the precise cause, with initial suspicions focusing on the use of flammable materials during a refurbishment project. 3 men, directors of the construction firm and a consultant, have been arrested on suspicion of manslaughter. Authorities are examining the refurbishment process, particularly the presence of bamboo scaffolding and protective mesh sheeting, which are common in Hong Kong, but now considered a potential factor in the rapid spread of the fire. The fire's impact is significant, with over 70 individuals hospitalized and a considerable number of residents displaced. The complex, housing around 2,000 apartments and 4,000 residents, presented a complex evacuation challenge. The Independent Commission Against Corruption is conducting a thorough investigation into potential negligence and corruption related to the refurbishment project. This investigation aims to determine if substandard materials or improper construction practices contributed to the fire's severity. Rescue efforts continue, with firefighters battling the remaining flames and focusing on locating and assisting those still unaccounted for. The operation is complicated by the building's height, the structural damage, and the ongoing need to ensure resident safety. The incident has prompted a broader review of building safety regulations and construction practices in Hong Kong, with a particular emphasis on the use of flammable materials and the effectiveness of fire prevention measures. The fire's impact extends beyond the immediate casualties, highlighting the vulnerability of high-density urban environments and the importance of robust emergency response systems. Authorities are working to provide support to affected residents and ensure a coordinated recovery effort. The investigation is expected to take several weeks, with findings potentially leading to significant changes in building standards and safety protocols. National Guard shooting Spurs immigration review and deployment reassessment. A targeted shooting involving 2 National Guard members near the White House in Washington, D.C., has triggered a rapid series of responses, including a review of immigration protocols and a renewed push to deploy additional National Guard troops to the capital. The suspect, identified as Ramanullah Lakamal, an Afghan national admitted to the U.S. in September 2021 under the previous administration, remains in custody. Initial reports indicated critical condition for the guardsman, later corrected by Governor Patrick Morrisey. Donald Trump swiftly addressed the nation via video from Mar-a-Lago, placing blame squarely on the Biden administration for the suspect's entry and demanding a re-examination of all Afghan immigrants admitted under the current administration. He requested the deployment of an additional 500 National Guard members to Washington, D.C., to bolster security efforts. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announced an indefinite halt to the processing of all immigration cases related to Afghan immigrants. The shooting has intensified scrutiny of vetting procedures for foreign nationals entering the country. The incident prompted a review of existing protocols, with officials emphasizing the need for more rigorous security measures. The federal judge's prior ruling halting the National Guard's deployment in Washington, D.C., has been temporarily suspended as the administration seeks an appeal. National Guard troops have been present in Washington, D.C., since August as part of President Trump's anti-crime initiative. The deployment has expanded to other cities. The shooting underscores the challenges associated with maintaining law and order in the nation's capital. The investigation is ongoing, with authorities working to determine the suspect's motives and access to firearms. The administration's response highlights the complexities of immigration policy and national security concerns. The situation remains fluid, with ongoing developments expected in the coming days. Guinea-Bissau coup military seizes power. President detained. A coup d'état has unfolded in Guinea-Bissau, with a group of military officers taking control of the country, following reports of President Umaro Sissoco Embal's arrest. The events transpired after gunfire was heard in the capital, Bissau, prompting widespread panic and evacuations. A newly appointed transitional president, General Horta Ntam, was sworn in a day after the seizure, displaying a lack of emotion during the proceedings. The coup was instigated by elements within the military, reportedly motivated by concerns surrounding the upcoming presidential election results and allegations of a planned destabilization effort involving unnamed politicians and a well-known drug baron. The military officers formed the High Military Command for the Restoration of Order, declaring their control until further notice. Prior to the coup, the presidential election, scheduled for November 27th, was at the center of intense dispute. Both Embal and his main challenger, Fernando Dias, had claimed victory, despite the disqualification of Domingos Pereira, Dias's initial supporter. The election was meant to determine the country's leadership after a protracted and contested process. The situation is deeply rooted in Guinea-Bissau's history of political instability, with a record of 9 coups or attempted coups since 1980. Embal had previously faced multiple coup attempts, including one in December 2023. The country's vulnerability stems from its status as one of the world's poorest nations, a key transit point for cocaine trafficking, and its designation as a narco state by the United Nations. Several other officials, including Dias Pereira and Interior Minister Bache Kane, were also detained by the military. The African Union and ECOWAS expressed grave concern regarding the coup d'état, emphasizing the need for constitutional order and the peaceful acceptance of the election results. Portugal, the former colonial ruler, has called for a return to normalcy. The borders of Guinea-Bissau were reopened following the coup. The instability highlights the ongoing challenges facing Guinea-Bissau and its efforts to establish a stable and democratic government. The country's population of nearly 2 million continues to grapple with poverty and the pervasive influence of drug trafficking. Venezuela bans airlines amid rising tensions with U.S. and tensions between Venezuela and the United States have escalated dramatically, leading to the immediate ban by Venezuela on 6 major international airlines: Iberia, TAP Portugal, Gol Latam, Avianca, and Turkish Airlines. This action followed a 48-hour deadline failure by the airlines to resume flights into Caracas, triggered by heightened U.S. military activity off the Venezuelan coast. The Venezuelan government accused the airlines of joining state terrorism, promoted by the U.S. The U.S. deployed a significant military force, including the USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier, citing counter-drug operations, though Venezuela alleges the deployment is a pretext for regime change under President Nicolás Maduro. The FAA issued a warning to flight operators due to the deteriorating security situation. Meanwhile, Colombian President Gustavo Petro has asserted that U.S. pressure on Venezuela is primarily driven by access to the country's vast oil reserves. Petro believes the Trump administration's motivations extend beyond combating drug trafficking, dismissing the notion of a significant Venezuelan role in global cocaine production, noting that 84% of seized cocaine originates in Colombia. Petro has been critical of the U.S.'s actions and accusations against Maduro, highlighting the ongoing tensions and strained relations. Recent reports have emerged regarding alleged links between Colombian officials and dissident FARC rebels, detailing the sharing of sensitive intelligence and advice on weapons acquisition. Despite these allegations, Petro maintains that no Colombian investigations have established a direct connection between Maduro and drug trafficking. The U.S. has designated the Cartel de los Soles as a foreign terrorist organization, a move Venezuela denies. Despite these heightened tensions, U.S.-Colombia relations remain relatively stable, with the Biden administration reaffirming its strong ties with Colombia's institutions and the majority of its political sector. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has emphasized the importance of maintaining these relationships. The UN Office on Drugs and Crime confirms Venezuela is not a cocaine-producing country, with the vast majority of Colombian cocaine trafficked north along the Pacific coast. The situation underscores a complex geopolitical struggle with significant implications for regional security and international relations. Fiscal Policy and Economic Outlook, a summary, recent economic news, reveals a complex interplay of fiscal adjustments and revised growth forecasts. The UK economy is facing a period of slower growth, primarily driven by factors beyond immediate governmental control, including technological advancements and global uncertainties. The Office for Budget Responsibility, OBR, has lowered its growth projections for the coming years, reflecting concerns about productivity stagnation and persistent global headwinds. Initially, the OBR raised its growth forecast for this year to 1.5%, acknowledging a stronger than anticipated economic performance. However, it subsequently downgraded forecasts for 2026 through 2029, predicting growth rates of 1.4% annually. This revision underscores the challenges of sustaining economic expansion amid geopolitical risks and subdued business and consumer confidence. The government's fiscal strategy centers on bolstering economic growth through targeted investments and strategic spending. Chancellor Rachel Reeves has emphasized progress in achieving this goal, highlighting infrastructure projects, housing developments, and construction activity. Simultaneously, the government is implementing measures to increase tax revenue, anticipating a sustained rise in tax liabilities over the next 5 years. Alongside these fiscal adjustments, the OBR's forecast highlights the importance of productivity improvements. Lower productivity growth is a key factor behind the downgraded growth projections, indicating a need for reforms and investments to enhance the efficiency of the UK economy. Furthermore, the government's minimum wage increases, aimed at boosting worker incomes, are intended to stimulate consumer spending and support economic activity. However, concerns remain about the potential impact of these wage rises on business costs and employment levels. The OBR's forecast also acknowledges the significant role of external factors, such as global conflicts and trade disruptions, in shaping the UK's economic outlook. The government's ability to influence these external factors is limited, reinforcing the need for a resilient and adaptable economic strategy. Ultimately, the economic outlook remains uncertain, contingent on the interplay of domestic policy adjustments and global economic dynamics. The government's commitment to sustained growth, coupled with proactive management of economic risks, will be crucial in navigating the challenges ahead. Multiple cyber attacks highlight data security vulnerabilities across UK local authorities. A series of interconnected cyber attacks across the UK, including incidents at the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea RBKC, the Western Isles Council, and Asahi Beverages, underscore critical vulnerabilities in data security within local government and major corporations. The RBKC attack, occurring 2 years after a previous incident, revealed ongoing recovery efforts and highlighted the need for robust, regularly tested cyber incident response plans. The initial attack, involving malicious software, disrupted council services, including tax and benefits processing, and prompted a blunt disconnection of systems to prevent further intrusion, mirroring a similar response taken by the Co-op. The Accounts Commission emphasized the importance of consistent testing and support for staff during severe incidents, acknowledging the considerable strain placed on employees. Meanwhile, the Western Isles Council continues to grapple with the aftermath of a sophisticated cyber attack in November 2023, which impacted systems and backups, disrupting services and impacting residents. The Accounts Commission stressed the need for thorough testing of the Council's response plans and highlighted the importance of consistent support for staff. Furthermore, Asahi Beverages revealed a massive ransomware attack in September, potentially exposing the personal data of over 1.5 million customers. This incident, attributed to the Qlin ransomware group, exposed vulnerabilities in supply chain security and the need for enhanced cybersecurity measures within large corporations. The company delayed its full-year financial results to focus on mitigating the fallout. Across all these incidents, a common thread emerged: a lack of consistent testing, reliance on reactive measures, and insufficient digital housekeeping. Experts consistently advocated for normalizing and randomizing file names, a straightforward data handling practice, to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive information. The attacks served as a stark reminder of the interconnected nature of digital risk and the potential for cascading disruptions when vulnerabilities are exploited. The incidents prompted calls for improved cybersecurity protocols, consistent testing of response plans, and a greater emphasis on proactive digital hygiene across all sectors, particularly local government and large corporations. The need for rapid and effective incident response, coupled with ongoing vigilance, was repeatedly emphasized as essential to safeguarding valuable data and maintaining essential services. Supreme Court defers decision on Library of Congress official removal addresses multiple executive overreach cases. The Supreme Court has paused its consideration of President Donald Trump's attempt to remove the Library of Congress's chief copyright official, Shira Perlmutter, while simultaneously addressing 2 other cases involving executive branch overreach. The court's decision reflects a broader pattern of scrutiny regarding the president's ability to unilaterally dismiss officials from agencies perceived as operating within the legislative branch. At the heart of the matter is Perlmutter's dispute with Trump, stemming from a report she released in May suggesting that copyrighted works used to train artificial intelligence models would likely require licensing. Trump subsequently attempted to remove her, leading to a legal challenge. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that Perlmutter, as the Register of Copyrights, is part of the legislative branch and therefore subject to removal only by a Senate-confirmed Librarian of Congress. However, the Supreme Court's intervention extends beyond the Library of Congress case. The court is also examining Trump's attempt to remove the Federal Trade Commission official, Rebecca Kelly Slaughter, and another attempt to remove a Federal Reserve Governor, Lisa Cook. In each case, the court is grappling with the extent of the president's authority to dismiss officials from agencies that perform executive functions, particularly those intertwined with the legislative process. The Library of Congress case remains central, with the court's decision indicating a willingness to uphold the separation of powers and protect the independence of agencies, like the Library of Congress. The court's decision to simultaneously address the other executive overreach cases suggests a broader commitment to safeguarding the balance of power within the federal government. The arguments presented by both sides highlight fundamental legal questions regarding executive authority and the role of the judiciary in resolving disputes between the branches of government. The resolution of these cases will undoubtedly have significant implications for the future of executive power and the operation of federal agencies. Pope Leo's diplomatic tour prioritizes peace and reconciliation. Pope Leo's inaugural foreign trip commenced in Turkey, immediately establishing a core theme: the urgent need to avert escalating global conflict. Addressing President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the Pope emphasized the potential for humanity's future to be jeopardized by heightened levels of conflict, urging Turkey to serve as a stabilizing force through dialogue and stability promotion. This visit marks a significant moment, building upon the late Pope Francis' commitment to building bridges and reflecting Pope Leo's cautious yet diplomatic approach. The trip's historical significance lies in commemorating the 700-year anniversary of the Nicaea Council, a pivotal event where the Nicene Creed was formulated, despite subsequent divisions within Christianity. Pope Leo will convene with leaders of other Christian traditions in Iznik, focusing on messages of unity and healing. A key element of the trip involves a visit to the Blue Mosque, a tradition followed by previous Popes Francis and Benedict XVI. Despite recent Israeli airstrikes in Beirut, plans for Pope Leo's visit to Lebanon remain unchanged. He intends to meet with faith leaders and young people, offering support to the Christian community, representing approximately 1/3 of the nation's population. The final day will include a mass at the Beirut waterfront, honoring the victims of the 2020 port explosion. Pope Leo's approach differs noticeably from his predecessor, balancing progressive ideals with traditionalist viewpoints, a strategy that has garnered support from diverse factions within the Catholic Church. While Pope Francis frequently made direct appeals to the Holy Family Church in Gaza, Pope Leo's focus remains on broader calls for an end to war. The trip represents a deliberate effort to foster dialogue and reconciliation amidst ongoing global challenges, prioritizing unity and peace. South Africa responds to U.S. exclusion from 2026 G20 summit. South Africa has reacted with disappointment and a firm stance following U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement that the country would not be invited to participate in next year's G20 summit, which will be held in Miami, Florida. Trump cited South Africa's refusal to allow a U.S. embassy representative to take over the G20 presidency after the summit in Johannesburg as the primary reason for the exclusion. President Cyril Ramaphosa described Trump's decision as regrettable, emphasizing that the U.S. skipped the summit voluntarily. Despite this, South Africa intends to proceed with its engagement within the broader G20 framework, focusing on collaboration with other member nations to maintain momentum on key issues discussed in Johannesburg. South African presidential spokesman Vincent Magwenya stated that the country should by now accept that a relationship reset with the U.S. is unlikely, particularly given the potential for visa restrictions. He indicated a shift in focus to working with other G20 members. Trump's actions stem from a widely discredited narrative alleging a white genocide in South Africa, a claim repeatedly refuted by the South African government. Trump's latest statement, delivered via Truth Social, further escalated tensions, announcing a halt to all U.S. payments and subsidies to South Africa. South African officials are calling for solidarity from other G20 members, urging them to defend the integrity of the summit and the rights of all participating nations. The Johannesburg Summit, the first ever held in Africa, concluded with a joint declaration committing to multilateral cooperation on climate change mitigation and economic inequality. This declaration was adopted despite objections from the US, which accused South Africa of weaponizing its leadership. The situation highlights ongoing diplomatic friction between the two countries, rooted in differing perspectives on domestic and foreign policy issues. South Africa continues to assert the falsity of the white genocide claims and maintain its commitment to international engagement within the G20. The US's decision underscores a strategic move to isolate South Africa from a key global forum. UK net migration significantly decreases amidst policy shifts. The Office for National Statistics (ONS) released data revealing a substantial decline in UK net migration for the year ending June 2025, with a recorded figure of 204,000. This represents a considerable decrease compared to the 649,000 recorded in the preceding year and a dramatic reduction from the peak of 944,000 observed in the 12 months to March 2023. The primary drivers of this decline are the reduced number of non-EU nationals seeking work or study opportunities within the UK, coupled with a sustained increase in individuals departing the country. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood attributed the figures to positive government reforms, characterizing the reduction as at its lowest level in half a decade, and a more than two-thirds decrease since the current administration took office. However, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp expressed skepticism, suggesting the fall is largely attributable to policy changes enacted during the previous Conservative government. Alongside the net migration figures, the Home Office released supplementary data detailing asylum claims. A total of 110,051 individuals claimed asylum in the UK during the year ending September 2025. A significant proportion, approximately 51,249, arrived via illegal routes, with an overwhelming majority, 89%, entering the country via small boats. Furthermore, the data indicated that 36,273 individuals were accommodated in asylum hotels as of September 2025, highlighting the ongoing challenges associated with managing asylum applications and housing. The combined data paints a complex picture of migration trends within the UK, influenced by policy changes, economic factors, and the ongoing management of asylum claims. The figures underscore the government's efforts to control migration flows and the associated logistical and humanitarian considerations. France reintroduces military service amidst Russian security concerns. France is set to reintroduce a limited form of military service, marking a significant shift in national defense strategy. Driven by escalating security concerns, particularly regarding Russia, the government announced a voluntary scheme aimed at bolstering its armed forces. Initially, the program will involve approximately 30,000 young volunteers next year, with the potential to expand to 50,000 by 2035. The scheme will provide 10 months of paid training for 18 and 19-year-olds, offering a monthly salary of at least 800 to 700. The decision follows a growing recognition of the need for a readily available pool of trained personnel, especially considering France's current military strength of around 200,000 professionals and 47,000 reservists. This move aligns France with other European nations, including Belgium and the Netherlands, who have also implemented voluntary military service schemes, and mirrors Germany's planned initiative. Lithuania and Latvia maintain compulsory schemes, while Sweden, recently joining NATO, has begun a longer service with merit-based selection. The plan is intended to create a hybridized, armed force, transitioning away from a purely professional model. Recent statements by Chief of Staff Gen Fabian Mandan, including warnings about potential casualties and calls for a spirit of sacrifice, have fueled public discussion. Despite initial public support evidenced by a 73% approval rating in a recent LAB survey, concerns remain, particularly regarding the potential for young recruits to be deployed in conflict zones. The BBC reported that street interviews revealed a general acceptance of the scheme, with young people expressing views on national pride and the value of community service. The government has explicitly stated that no plans exist to send recruits to Ukraine. The overall goal is to strengthen France's defense capabilities and adapt to the evolving geopolitical landscape. Australia's environment laws undergo historic overhaul. Australia is poised to enact the most significant reforms to its environmental legislation in decades, driven by a last-minute agreement between the Labour government and the Greens Party. The overhaul addresses long-standing deficiencies in the nation's environmental protections, culminating in the establishment of an independent environment regulator, a first for the country. Following months of stalled negotiations with the opposition, a coalition of the Liberals and Nationals, the legislation is now expected to pass through the Senate on Thursday, marking the final parliamentary sitting of the year. The core of the reform centers around increased protections for native forests, stricter regulations governing land clearing, and a deliberate limitation on the expedited approval processes for coal and gas projects. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese emphasized the dual benefits of the changes: asserting they represent a victory for both environmental conservation and economic productivity, specifically accelerating projects related to housing, renewable energy, and the burgeoning critical minerals sector. The opposition, led by Susan Ley, sharply criticized the Labour Greens Accord, branding it dirty and predicting detrimental consequences, including job losses within the forestry industry. The impetus for these changes stems from a 5-year-old independent review that identified the existing environmental laws as fundamentally inadequate. The new regulations will also eliminate exemptions concerning high-risk land clearing and integrate regional forest agreements under federal jurisdiction, previously managed by individual state governments. This comprehensive approach seeks to establish a unified national standard for environmental protection, safeguarding endangered wildlife, and ultimately shaping a more sustainable future for Australia. The creation of the National Environment Protection Agency is a crucial component, signifying a significant shift in Australia's environmental governance. Thailand faces governance and ethical challenges. Recent developments across Thailand's political landscape highlight critical issues concerning governance, ethical conduct, and public trust within key institutions. A significant court ruling against Senator Thanakorn Thavrachanichot for fraudulently exploiting victims of a fatal car accident underscores a pervasive problem of misconduct within the Senate. The Chachoengsao court sentenced him to 6 years, later reduced to 4, after he was found to have misrepresented himself as assisting victims while stealing valuables. This case, coupled with the Senate's subsequent inaction regarding his behavior, reflects a troubling pattern of ethical lapses. Furthermore, the Senate's handling of Senator Nantana Nanavaropoulos' case demonstrates a double standard in applying ethical guidelines. While the court ruled in her favor, finding her criticism of a fellow senator's profession did not constitute defamation, the Senate's Ethics Committee deemed her remarks disrespectful, leading to a referral to the National Anti-Corruption Commission with the intention of removing her from office. This disparity in judgment fuels public distrust. The situation is compounded by concerns surrounding the Election Commission's screening processes, exemplified by the approval of Senator Thanakorn despite a prior criminal record. This highlights a systemic failure to adequately vet candidates and raises questions about the integrity of the electoral system. These issues contribute to a broader crisis of confidence in Thailand's political institutions. The ongoing controversies surrounding the Senate, including allegations of poll rigging and collusion, have deepened public skepticism. The need for improved governance, ethical standards, and robust oversight mechanisms is now more urgent than ever. Addressing these challenges is crucial to restoring public trust and ensuring the stability of Thailand's democracy. The Senate's failure to address these concerns swiftly risks further eroding public confidence and exacerbating existing divisions within the country. The situation demands immediate action and a commitment to upholding the highest ethical standards within the upper house. Nepal's young protesters drive political reset. Nepal's political landscape has undergone a significant transformation following a week of violent protests spearheaded by its youth. These demonstrations led to the resignation of Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli and the dissolution of parliament, resulting in the formation of an interim government headed by Sushila Karki. The Gen Z-led movement represents a potential reset for the country's democracy, challenging established political parties and demanding a more responsive, inclusive, and accountable system. Youth unemployment, hovering around 20%, and the sight of politicians' children displaying luxury goods on social media fueled the initial outrage. The government's draconian social media ban served as the immediate catalyst, but underlying issues of corruption and lack of opportunity had been building for years. Clashes between youth and Oli's party resulted in injuries and curfews. The protests are now characterized by internal divisions as new parties emerge, potentially weakening the movement's collective power. Transitioning from online engagement, primarily through platforms like Discord, to traditional campaigning including door-to-door outreach and fundraising presents a significant hurdle. To maintain inclusivity, Gen Z parties should utilize online referendums to determine leadership. Forming broad coalitions centered on anti-corruption measures and job creation is crucial. Moving beyond slogans and implementing actionable plans, such as harnessing Nepal's hydropower potential, is essential. Blending social media with community forums can bridge digital divides and foster dialogue with older parties. Established parties argue for experience, while the youth movement's demands, though ambitious, represent a necessary renewal. The interim PM's ongoing talks with both youth and older parties are a positive step towards national reconciliation. The success of this movement could inspire democratic renewal globally, highlighting the power of digital movements to drive lasting change. The future of Nepal's democracy hinges on the ability of its young people to translate their online passion into tangible political action and build a more responsive and equitable nation. Southern Thailand flooding, economic losses and recovery efforts. Severe flooding continues across 9 southern Thai provinces: Surat Thani, Phathalung, Songkhla, Nakhon Sathamarat, Patani, Yala, and Narathiwat, following record rainfall. Hat Yai Songkhla has been particularly hard hit, with water levels reaching up to shin deep in some areas. The flooding, beginning with 630 mm of rain over 3 days, has disrupted economic activities and is projected to cause significant financial losses. Estimates of the economic damage range from 25 billion baht if the flooding persists for a month. Kasikorn Research Center SK Research projects a loss of 1.5 billion baht per day, primarily affecting the service sector including hotels, restaurants, retail, and transport, alongside agricultural and food processing industries. The impact spans across 10 provinces, with Songkhla's 40–50% of its GDP directly affected by the flooding in Hat Yai. Many factories in Sadao, Singa Nakhon, and parts of Mueang district have continued operations, but transportation and raw material delivery have been severely hampered. Approximately 80–90% of Hat Yai's business district is submerged. The tourism sector is also experiencing a downturn, with potential travelers hesitant to visit the region. Restoration of businesses, particularly restaurants, is anticipated to take months, especially during the peak tourism season. The Thai Restaurant Association estimates that many restaurants are submerged and require extensive repairs. Government relief efforts are underway, including the Department of Internal Trade's distribution of survival kits and coordination with shelters to provide essential supplies. The government is offering soft loans to affected restaurant operators with relaxed terms and is exploring debt payment extensions. Authorities are focusing on waste and mud removal and considering long-term relocation strategies, recognizing the likelihood of future flooding. Commerce Minister Sufajay Sathumpun's department is also organizing Blue Flag events to provide discounted consumer goods to flood victims. The situation is complex, requiring coordinated action to support both individuals and businesses in the affected areas.